So you've been losing weight, feeling great, and everything's going according to plan. Then suddenly the weight loss comes to a screeching halt. You're doing everything you did before, but now it's not working, leaving you frustrated. I get it, weight loss plateaus are annoying, but they're also normal. Fortunately for you, I'm not only going to explain why they happen, but what you should do to get the weight moving again. Hey, this is Colin DeWaay. If you want to master your metabolism and get in the best shape of your life, start now by subscribing and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. Alright, I'm going to give you 6 different ways you can break through your weight loss plateau. Make sure you don't miss number 4. It's my personal favorite and what I think is the best. But before I give you the exact how-to, I think it's important to talk about why they happen to begin with, because without this knowledge, you'll just be set up to get really frustrated with the process and much more likely to fail because of it. So what we know about losing weight is that you have to be in a calorie deficit to do so, which means you need to burn more calories than you consume. So the first thing you need to consider about why your weight does plateau, even though you're probably doing the exact same thing you were doing before, is the more weight that you carry, the more calories your body burns just being you. This is actually the highest amount of calories burned in the calories out part of the equation, and this is your basal metabolic rate, or BMR. The more you weigh, the higher that number will be. And really this just makes sense. The more mass your body has, the more work your body has to do. So as you lose weight, your BMR drops and you need to do something to create that calorie deficit that is no longer there. But unfortunately, it's not just about how much weight you've lost, because arguably the biggest thing you need to factor in is the fact that your body will just adapt to whatever you do through many different hormonal and metabolic adaptations that occur from dieting. Really, if you think about it, it's just your body's way of making sure that you don't starve yourself to death. If it didn't make these adaptations, especially in the earlier days when food was pretty scarce, if you ever went really long without food and your body just used fat for fuel, well, pretty soon your body would just use up all those fat stores immediately and you'd be dead. So your body makes these adjustments to make sure this doesn't happen by getting better at storing the calories you do give it. And it does this by reducing the amount of calories that you burn through the things like your basal metabolic rate, the thermic effect of food, and the thermic effect of exercise. Not only do these adaptations happen, but research has actually shown the reductions in calorie expenditure when in a calorie deficit tend to exceed what would be expected based on the amount of weight lost, especially when you reduce your calories severely. Basically, your body is gonna fight weight loss, and the more you lose, the more it's gonna fight it. Now the first thing you can do if you're in a weight loss plateau, and this is kind of a low-hanging fruit, if you're not currently tracking, start tracking and just take a few days to a week, eat the same way you've been eating, but actually track it so you can see what it looks like. Because what did we say had to happen in order to lose weight? We need a calorie deficit. And if you don't know how many calories you're consuming, it's going to be pretty hard to make adjustments when you hit these plateaus. Now this doesn't mean you have to track to lose weight. There's people who have successfully done it without tracking, but it sure makes it a lot easier when you have that data. And let's be honest, whether you're tracking or not, your body is. And many people, when they actually start tracking, are pretty shocked either how much they're eating or sometimes how little they're eating. Now the second part ties in perfectly with the first part, and that is if your protein is really low, which you may find out when you start tracking. And as crazy as it may sound, if you still eat around the same calories, but bring your protein up to a much higher level, it could be the very thing you need to kickstart weight loss again. Personally, I recommend eating about 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of your body weight daily, because protein is so helpful in a fat loss phase, not only because it has by far the highest thermic effect of food of all the macronutrients, but it's also very filling, and of course there's a lot of benefit to feeling fuller when you're dieting. Not to mention it helps preserve lean body mass, which is essential not just for body composition, but for a better metabolism. Anyway, circling back to the data you got from that tracking, now that you know how many calories you've been eating, you know roughly what your maintenance calories are, or if you've already been tracking and are stuck, then this next option is for you. And that's you need to create the calorie deficit again, so you're either gonna have to reduce your calories, increase your energy expenditure, or a combination of the two, which is what I typically recommend. I typically recommend dropping your calories from about 80 to 200 calories per day, making sure you don't take them from protein, whether it's carbs or fats is much less relevant, And then if you want, you can also increase some cardio, maybe around 20 to 60 minutes for the week. Which side of either range it falls on just kind of depends on what you prefer more, eating more calories or doing less cardio. This will oftentimes get things going again. However, I do think there is an even better option than this, which I'm going to talk about next, but one very quick note first. Make sure you understand that these adjustments are when you've already been dieting and you've been stuck. These are not for when you start a fat loss phase fresh, but that's for a different video. Okay, the fourth option to break a weight loss plateau is my favorite one, and it's one that I highly recommend, much more so than the one that I just gave you, and that's taking a diet break first and then making the adjustments I gave you from number 3. Actually, in some cases, people will go on a diet break and they can even go back to the same calories they were on before that weren't working, and now they will. But the best plateau busting option that I know of is to take the diet break and then make the adjustments after. This has easily become my favorite tactic that I use with my own clients who are cutting anytime I feel they need a change. Honestly, it's almost unheard of for this not to work, especially if you take a 2-week diet break. Remember how I talked about dieting causes these negative hormonal and metabolic adaptations? A diet break is when you take an extended period of time, typically around a week or two, you increase calories some as well as potentially reduce your cardio some, and give the body a break which kind of resets these hormones and metabolism. There's research that showed 2 weeks of cutting followed by 2 weeks of eating at maintenance with a diet break allowed for 47% better fat loss than just straight dieting. You just have to keep in mind that this is the actual time of dieting. So with the 2-week diet break group, that time was 30 weeks versus 16 weeks of straight dieting, but it really showed that they were in a better position, not only for fat loss, but keeping their metabolism in a better spot, and they maintained more of their weight after as well. Just know that diet break doesn't mean it's some sort of free-for-all where you eat as much as you want in whatever quantities you want. It still needs to be controlled, and how much you increase by it really varies a lot from person to person. But if you currently have a refeed in your plan, I typically do something really close to what that refeed is. And if you're tracking macros, I often find that a good refeed starting point is around 33 to 50% more carbs. But on average, I find most people do pretty well eating about 200 to 400 more calories on their diet break than they were on their diet, and preferably mostly through carbs if possible. And also, if you're doing a lot of cardio, I do think it's a good idea to reduce it some to help this process out, usually reducing by about 1/3 to 1/2 from what you were doing before. Now, personally, I think the diet break should be at least a week, but I really like to do 2 weeks when possible. I have just found that it works so well to give it that extra week. And if you're lucky enough to even lose weight during the break, which is not as uncommon as you might think, then I would just keep doing the break until that stops. Because the longer you can give your body a break, the more likely it is for your body to respond better when you come back. Oh, one thing before I go on to the 5th option. I do find that back-to-back refeeds on a weekly basis can be really helpful. They're almost kind of like mini diet breaks. So you have 2 days in a row of the higher calories through carbs, hopefully, and this seems to keep people in a better spot. But make sure they're back-to-back days. Single-day refeeds are nice for the mental benefit, for some increased glycogen, but they're not going to do anything for you hormonally. A double refeed can. All right, the 5th option for busting through a weight loss plateau is to take a week, but really tighten up how closely you're measuring and monitoring your food intake. You would be amazed how much the little stuff can really add up. Not only do little things like ketchup, coffee creamers, sugar-free gum, low-calorie energy drinks, things like that, how fast they can add up, but even more than that is eyeballing your portion sizes, taking extra bites and nibbles and licks, stealing your kid's last chicken nugget and not accounting for it, or the big one, your 1 serving of peanut butter. If you haven't been paying close attention to this, take 1 week, just 1 week, and be super diligent. I'm not saying you always have to be this hyper-focused, but you can certainly do it for 1 week, and it can really show you how far off you really are. I can't tell you how many times I've challenged someone who's been stuck to do this, and the next week they drop 2 pounds. And there's been a decent amount of research that has shown people just are not very good at estimating their intake. One study even found that obese people who reported not being able to lose weight eating 1,200 calories were actually eating double what they reported. And on the same topic, I highly recommend measuring via grams on a food scale over any kind of volume measurement. Something like a half a cup can be very different depending on how much space there is between the food, what kind of angle you're looking at it, and things like that. But a gram is always a gram. So if you're stuck and already tracking, just dial it in for a little bit, and that might be the thing that gets you over the hump. Okay, lots of ways to get over that pesky plateau, but what if you've done all this? What if you're doing everything right and you just cannot seem to lose weight? And at a certain point, it's very much possible you'll get to a spot where you just can't realistically drop your calories any lower or do any more cardio. Or at least you sure as hell don't want to. And the thought of dieting and staying on these low calories or making more adjustments makes your skin crawl. First of all, that's okay, but don't just give up and go back to your old eating habits. In fact, I hate to tell you this, but I need to because it's the truth and I'm trying to help you. There's actually a very good chance you will not reach your weight loss goals in one single attempt. Actually, very few people do because the body's just too adaptive, but that doesn't mean there's no hope. When you get to that point, this is where the next option comes into play. What you need to do is start a process called reverse dieting to get your hormones and metabolism back into a better position so you can come back later to effectively get more off. Reverse dieting is kind of similar to a diet break, but you're making smaller changes and you're doing it on a weekly basis, and you're doing this more long term versus just a short period where you come back to diet right away. In this case, you add maybe 50 to 100 calories per week until you get your calories back into a better place. And it's also good to get your cardio down to a more reasonable level as well and put your body in a better position. Now, you're probably gonna have to be okay with adding a little bit of body weight during this process, but do not panic and be okay with this and understand the difference between putting a little bit of weight back on and all the weight back on, which is unfortunately what most people do. Most people diet hard, get stuck, get frustrated, give up, go back to their old eating habits, gain all the weight back, many times even more, and start all over again. Do not do this. Don't undo all your hard work. Not this time. Your body just needs an extended break. It's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That doesn't mean you're weak. It's literally your body doing this to you intentionally. So take your time and be patient with it. I personally recommend that you reverse diet at least as long as you dieted before you come back to it again. Not that you should necessarily be increasing calories that whole time. Again, you just want to get it back to a reasonable place, a level where you're happy and you feel better, and then you can hold it the rest of that time. If you do this, in the long run, you will win. If you keep yo-yo dieting, you will do it for the rest of your life and only get bigger and bigger, and I don't want that for you. And hell, even if you do reach your goal, you're still going to need to reverse diet after anyway, because remember, your metabolism has adapted now. So you're on really low calories at this point, probably doing quite a bit of cardio. And unless you want to keep doing that for the rest of your life to maintain your results, you need to get your calories back up again. And this way, you can keep most of your results without having to continue to pound yourself into the ground. So don't get stubborn like so many people do, and just because you haven't reached your goal, keep trying to push and keep trying to push when your body's fighting you. I have seen this destroy a lot of people. If your body is talking to you and fighting you hard, listen to it. Because I promise, if you don't, it will win. Alright, here's what you need to do next. Make sure you check out this top video I did about carb cycling, and this will show you more about options like refeeds, more about diet breaks, and different strategies you can use to see better fat loss and keep your body in a better position metabolically. And I'll see you next time.